Well, morning folks, welcome to Wake Up Well this morning. I am taking the opportunity, possibly for the last time, to be outside and it's Monday the 12th of October. We are thinking this week about our urban harvest, which we held yesterday as a church. You can still give online to Food Bank if you follow the links on our webpage or on YouTube. And we're looking this week at different verses to do with God's heart for the poor and for the vulnerable. And I love the fact that the Old Testament is so practical when it talks about this kind of stuff. It doesn't just say it conceptually. It says this is God's heart. He loves the poor and the vulnerable and the outcasts. And he says we're to make provision for them in the everyday, in really practical ways. So here's one. We're going to have a look at Leviticus chapter 19 and verses 9 and 10. And this is what it says. First of all, God's given these instructions and he says this is for the entire community of Israel. This is for all my people. This doesn't just apply to one or two people here and there. And he says you're to be holy because I'm holy. And he says you're to honour your father and your mother, honour your parents, and then honour the Sabbath. And those are kind of, the standard things that we might expect. But the next thing he says is this: when you harvest the crops of your land, do not harvest the grain along the edges of your fields or pick up what the harvesters drop. It is the same with your grape crop. Do not strip every last bunch of grapes from the vine, and do not pick up the grapes that fall to the ground. Leave them for the poor and the foreigners living amongst you. I am the Lord your God. Isn't that fascinating? The very practical, very specific instructions. He says, when you're harvesting your field, don't go right to the edge. Don't get 100%. Just leave some stuff around the edge. When you're taking your crops in, in this instance it's grapes, just leave some of the stuff that you might drop and, some of the excess. Just leave it. Don't go right to the edge. And give it away. Give it away to people in need. Allow those people who live amongst you, who don't have enough, who haven't got the same opportunity that you have because they're your grapes, allow them to have some. And what's fascinating for me here is that he doesn't say do it when you've got enough, because there will be some years or some crops when you have more than enough, and it's easy to leave some and leave the stuff at the edge for people to pick up, and that's okay, and it's easy for you and me to give out of our abundance, isn't it? But there are other times when the crops are not enough, or we don't seem to have enough, and God still says leave some for the very poor, the very vulnerable. And he says it's for the poor and it's for the foreigners. So that the poor, in other words, those of your own people, those who live amongst you, they are to be your concern. They matter to God, so they should matter to us. People from our neighbourhoods, from our city, from our nationality and so on, because they're God's concern. And the foreigner. Now, in the Old Testament context, he means those who've come from other nations, which means they have no right to own land. They didn't have the houses or the property or the gardens or whatever to grow their own stuff in. There was no way that they could therefore produce food for themselves or for their families. They were entirely dependent on getting work or on kind of what they could pick up around the place. Today's equivalent to that in Sheffield could well be asylum seekers or failed asylum seekers, people from other lands, and they're here, and when you're in that position, you have no right to work and you have no right to benefits. So how do you feed yourself and your family? And that's why there are charities and opportunities for you and me to get involved with that, like Assist in Sheffield and Open Hands in Sheffield. So there's our question, there's our opportunity, there's a call, isn't there, in the Bible to you and to me to give out of what we do have, to give it away, to allow people to be fed, to be watered, to benefit from our excess, from what we do have, whether we have a lot or a little. So my family, even today, actually yesterday, we spoke at church about Urban Harvest, and so Marjorie went to a store and bought loads and loads of toiletries and food, and we brought it and we gave it to the food bank as our offering, as our family ourselves. We support a child in Malawi through World Vision. We monthly give money as a sponsor of a child, and I'm a trustee of a small charity called Open Hands that houses failed asylum seekers. They're little things, but they are something. that we can do in the everyday and make a difference? So that's our question. This Bible passage calls us to take action. What way can you and I this week seek justice and just leave something of what we do have for those who have less than ourselves? I bless you to take that into your heart and action today.